I'd like to do a couple of very short meditations, in fact, not really teachings, but meditations on prayer. And I'm kind of going to be basing it on my own approach to prayer, about how I pray. And I would just like to share kind of a couple of ideas over the next few weeks on prayer. Language actually gives away our most common understanding of prayer. And so we say to people who are undergoing problems about whatever, we say to them, go talk to God about it. We tell people to lift up their concerns, bring them before God. We tell them all this. This is our language. Even when we teach about prayer, we tell people to include more prayers of thanksgiving and praise in their prayer time and that kind of thing. We say that. Now, there's nothing wrong with this at all. Nothing at all. In fact, it's all an essential part of prayer life. But it's a one-sided understanding of prayer. And it's one-sided because prayer is essentially about communication. And communication is a two-sided story. So prayer, for me, is not so much about talking to God as what it's in having a conversation with God. Now, that's what it is. Communication is this two-way process of communicating to God. So it's actively talking, but it's also actively listening. And that's what we don't always get in prayer. We do a huge amount of talking to God, and we don't do that much listening to God. So I want to talk about this thing about communicating. And I want to talk in this first devotional on talking to God. Whether we talk to Him about our needs or whatever else, I want to talk about that. I strongly suspect that prayer may be one of the most natural, spontaneous, and frequent things we actually do. I don't think we always think that about that because we consider prayer as being a time when we're going to pray in our own quiet by whatever else. But I want to talk out of my own experience. I find myself talking to God in my mind and in my thoughts a lot of the time. I see something very beautiful and I say, wow, Lord, how did you get that right? You know, you see a beautiful sunset, you see a stunning bird, you see a beautiful scene, somehow, somewhere, and I find myself saying, wow, Lord, how does that happen? I remember seeing the birth of my two sons. I was there both. In fact, I can take you to the room where they were both born in Stad Hospital. I took Owen there because I think he needed to know where they came from. You know, in case he hadn't figured out it was Deirdre and I. But I needed to do that. But I remember with both my boys, my first reaction was, Lord, how is this possible? How can this be? This is the most amazing. I mean, there's a lot of blood and, you know, tears and snort and trying to float around. But I thought, how do you do this, Lord? That was my first response with my boys. I remember when Deborah walked down an aisle when we got married, thinking, wow, Lord, she's stunning. I think all of us communicate to God like that. Something happens and you think, Lord, what am I going to do now? Or, Lord, I need you here. I need you now. We do this in our minds. We see what's happening there in the Gaza Strip, and we say, Lord, how can this be? How can people be like that to others? That's how we respond and react. I think you're all like me. I don't think I'm different to other people. I think we're all the same. I think we naturally communicate to God all the time. I think we are all like that. Now, the word we give to that natural communicating to God, when we see things or something happens or whatever, we call that prayer. But what we're doing in those moments is expressing something of ourselves to God. It's like intercession. We see somebody with a need, and deep down in our minds we say, Lord, you've got to help this person. Lord, look at that person there. How you need to help them. Sometimes we see a plight and think, Lord, I need to give this person something. So even interceding, in many ways, is a very natural, spontaneous thing in our lives. It really is. We cry out to God naturally. We do it naturally. We stand in awe of God and say, Lord, this is amazing. Naturally. So when people say, I need to do a teaching on how to pray, I actually don't know what they're asking me. Because I'm pretty sure they know how to pray. You know, in the army we used to say, hey, even atheists, when the bullets fly around, the atheist learns how to talk to God. And I've seen it when people get shot. I've been on patrols where guys got shot, and I want to tell you, if the guy's not in a state of shock and can't talk, but if he can talk, I tell you now, they talk quite a bit to God. Because I've heard it. They might be the biggest ruffian, the one who refuses to listen to his chaplain or come to chaplain's periods. They might be the worst of the bunch. But when a bullet has gone through their leg or their chest or their stomach or whatever, I can tell you now, it's amazing how they talk to God. So I think it's a very natural thing. So my starting point with this, and that's all I want to do in this little teaching, is saying, talking to God is the most natural thing most of us do. And you don't have to learn how to do it, because it's instinctive within us to do so. Thank you. Yeah, let me say a prayer. Lord, just help us to understand that talking to you is the most natural thing we do. That we don't have to learn all the great things about talking to you, because it comes to us naturally. Help us to understand that. Amen.